All right, so today we're going deep, really deep,
Yeah.
into a conversation between J. Krishnamurti and David Bohm,
Okay.
recorded back in 1975. Krishnamurti, of course,
Right.
the spiritual teacher,
Right.
and Bohm, a prominent theoretical physicist.
Interesting combination.
Yeah, a really fascinating pairing. And in this conversation, they're tackling a big question. What is the nature of mystery? And can we as humans even begin to understand something that seems to be beyond thought, beyond language?
It's a huge question. And what makes this conversation so interesting is that both Krishnamurti and Bohm, they draw on their own personal experiences and observations. So
Yeah.
it's not just theoretical. It gets really, really personal.
Right out of the gate, they start wrestling with the very definition of mystery.
Yeah. Bohm, he connects it to the idea of something hidden, secret. He even brings up those esoteric traditions. You find them in cultures throughout history.
Okay.
And he points out, even the way we talk about confidential things,
Yeah.
we lower our voices, right?
We do, yeah.
It's like whispering reinforces the idea that there's some hidden truth.
Just like we're kind of like encoded with this.
Exactly. And then Krishnamurti, always the skeptic, he jumps in and asks,
Yeah.
is there really anything mysterious at all?
That's a good question.
It really is.
And it kind of sets the tone, for the whole conversation.
It does. It's back and forth. And then Bohm, he brings in his perspective as a scientist.
Okay.
He talks about how for many scientists, the pursuit of science, it starts with a fascination with the unknown.
Right, like a yearning.
Yeah, a yearning to explore the mysteries of the universe.
Exactly.
And he actually shares this story from his time at Berkeley.
Okay.
He was witnessing the construction of this massive magnet.
Huge magnet.
Huge. It was for atomic research.
Oh, wow.
And he says initially, the project was all driven by this sense of wonder.
Right.
This desire to unlock the secrets of the atom.
Like, what is this thing?
Yeah, exactly. But of course, as we know, this project eventually became part of the Manhattan Project.
Right, which led to,
exactly.
to the atomic bomb.
To the atomic bomb. So it kind of shows how this drive to explain things, sometimes it can overshadow the initial wonder.
The mystery.
Yeah, the mystery.
Yeah, it's like this question that it brings up.
Mm-hmm.
Does explaining something take away its mystery?
Right. Is it possible to understand something scientifically and still feel that sense of awe?
Yeah.
Can those two things coexist?
And Krishnamurti puts this question directly to Bohm.
He does. He asks, if you as a scientist wanted to participate in this mystery, how would you do it?
What an interesting question.
What would you need? And his response is kind of surprising.
Yeah.
He says you would need a sensitive body.
A sensitive body.
And he's not just talking about physical sensitivity.
Right.
He's talking about a mind that's clear, insightful,
Yeah.
free from emotional baggage, free from preconceptions.
Okay, so being able to perceive things without the distortion of our internal stuff,
And
right?
your own,
But how do we actually do that?
Right. How do we get that kind of clarity? Well, Krishnamurti, he really emphasizes the importance of listening.
Just listening.
Really listening to what's being said without all that internal commentary we usually have going on.
Right, all the judgments.
All the judgments,
All that internal chatter, it's so hard to just be quiet.
It is a challenge, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think this is something we all struggle with, to really quiet the mind and just listen without imposing our own interpretations.
Because we're constantly filtering everything through our own experiences and beliefs.
Absolutely.
And it makes you wonder how much we're missing.
Exactly.
Because we're not truly present.
It's a good point. And this leads them into a deeper exploration of thought itself.
Okay.
Bohm and Krishnamurti, they start dissecting thought, looking at its limitations.
Its limits, yeah.
How it always wants to grasp the whole.
To complete the incomplete.
Yeah, to make everything fit into its neat little categories.
But that actually prevents us from experiencing the mystery.
It's like trying to fit the ocean into a teacup.
Right, it's too vast.
Too vast, yeah. And they talk about this tendency of thought to always want to expand.
To control.
To go beyond its limits. And this is where they introduce the concept of the center.
Just centered.
Yeah, the ego, the sense of self that thought creates and sustains.
So they're saying our sense of self.
Our sense of self?
Is actually a construct of thought.
A kind of a mental prison, almost.
Wow, that's a big idea.
It is. It's this idea that our sense of self, the ego,
Yeah.
it actually separates us from the wholeness of reality.
This is where it starts to get really mind-bending, I gotta say.
It does.
Yeah.
And then, to explore this idea of separation even further,
Okay.
Bohm brings in the concept of time.
Time, okay?
He argues that time, as we experience it, it perpetuates this illusion of separation. He explains how tradition, passed down through language, example, societal norms,
Right.
it all instills this belief in the reality of time.
The linear progression.
Yes, past, present, future. And he argues that even if you transcend that personal sense of becoming...
Like that pressure to achieve things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says there's still this subtle but pervasive sense of movement that we exist in.
It's like we're always on a track.
Always on a track, yeah. And he thinks it's probably ingrained in us through tradition.
Tradition, and maybe just, reinforced
Maybe.
by, our bodies.
Possibly. But Krishnamurti...
Yeah.
He has a completely different take on time.
Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, he says he's never personally experienced the psychological burden of time.
Never.
Especially, he says, the pressure of becoming something in the future.
That's wild, to think of time in a completely different way.
Yeah, and this really challenges, the conventional view.
Right, because we're so conditioned.
To think about time in a linear way. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if our obsession with the past and the future is actually preventing us from fully experiencing the present moment.
That's a good question to ponder, and one we'll definitely delve into more.
In the next part of our deep dive.
Absolutely. Welcome back. So we've been talking about the nature of mystery and how our thinking, even our perception of time, can kind of block us from directly experiencing it. And now Krishnamurti, he does something interesting. He starts sharing these personal stories, and they seem to, challenge our usual understanding of reality.
Yeah, these stories, they're really something. He talks about meeting a monk in India who offered him water. And get this, the water tasted sweet the second time he drank it. Something changed in the water itself.
It is strange. It's as if he's saying, look, there are things happening that we can't explain with our normal ways of thinking. He also talks about seeing a man levitate across the room and a piece of newspaper, shrinking and disappearing right in front of him.
I gotta be honest, when I first heard these stories, my skeptical side, it went a little crazy. I was trying to come up with logical explanations, or at least figure out how they could have been faked. It's natural to want to make everything fit into what we already know.
Yeah, I get that. And that's exactly what Krishnamurti is getting at. He's not saying these stories are proof of anything supernatural or mystical. He's very careful to separate these strange events from what he calls mystery.
Okay, so if these events aren't the mystery, what are they? What's he trying to show us?
It seems like he's suggesting that these events, even though we can't explain them with current science, could point to laws of nature we haven't discovered yet, or maybe extraordinary human abilities we don't understand. In other words, there's still things we could potentially understand, even if we don't have the full picture yet.
So it's like saying, we don't know how levitation works, but maybe someday science will be able to explain it. It doesn't mean it's automatically outside the realm of science. It just means we need to learn more.
Exactly. But the mystery Krishnamurti's talking about, it's different. It's not about unexplained phenomena. It's about something that goes beyond the structure of thought itself. It's not about filling in the gaps in our knowledge, but about encountering something that challenges the very way we know things.
This is where it gets tricky, because how do you even talk about something that's beyond language? How do you point to something that can't be put into words or explanations?
Yeah, it's tough. It's like trying to describe a color that no one's ever seen before. And I think that's why Krishnamurti keeps emphasizing personal experience. He talks about seeing or perceiving truth directly instead of trying to grasp it through intellectual analysis.
So is he saying we need some kind of mystical experience to access this mystery? Does it require a special initiation or spiritual practice?
I don't think he's necessarily talking about visions or rituals. I think it's more about a fundamental shift in how we see things, a way of seeing reality that's not filtered through our usual thoughts and beliefs.
Okay, but how do we make that shift? Is there a method, a technique, a path we can follow?
Krishnamurti is very clear that there's no method or prescribed path. He rejects any kind of structured practice or ritual because he says those actually reinforce the very thought patterns we need to let go of.
That's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
If there's no path, How do we get there? How do we even begin to approach this mystery if our usual ways of thinking and doing are obstacles?
That's the real challenge. And I think both Krishnamurti and Bohm would say it's not something you can force or achieve through effort. It's more about seeing things deeply, about really recognizing the limitations of thought itself.
So it's like thought has to end for this mystery to show itself. But isn't that a contradiction? How can we think our way out of thinking?
That's the heart of it, and there's no easy answer. But maybe the first step is becoming aware of how our minds create illusions, how they create separation.
So noticing those mental tricks, the ways we cling to ideas, beliefs, even our sense of self, like they're solid and real, when maybe they're more fluid and interconnected than we realize.
Right. And maybe in that noticing and seeing through those illusions, something else can emerge. Something that's not bound by time or space, something that can't be named or explained. But that's a conversation for the next part of our deep dive.
So we've been on this journey with Krishnamurti and Bohm, talking about mystery, the limits of thought, time as an illusion, even those stories that, seem to defy explanation. But where do we go from here? How do we actually take all of this and, live it?
Yeah, that's the question, right? How do we bridge that gap between these big ideas and everyday experience? And I think it's important to remember this deep dive, it's not about giving you all the answers or a step-by-step guide. It's more about sparking your curiosity, encouraging you to explore these ideas for yourself and see how they resonate with your own life.
Yeah, it's like an invitation to explore the mysteries, to see if we can find our own way to participate in what's beyond thought, right? But let's get real for a minute. How does this actually play out in everyday life? I mean, I can't just walk around ignoring my thoughts all the time, can I?
No, of course not. We need thought, right? It's a tool. It helps us navigate the world, make plans, solve problems, talk to each other. But the key is to not be completely controlled by thought, to realize it's not the ultimate truth. It's use thought, but don't let it use you.
I see what you mean, finding that balance between using thought when we need it, but also recognizing its limitations, not getting so caught up in our heads that we miss out on what's right here, right now.
Exactly. And that's where things like mindfulness can be helpful, not as a goal in itself, like Krishnamurti warns against, but as a way to become more aware of our thought patterns, to observe them without judging, without getting swept away.
Yeah, because if we can watch our thoughts with some distance, maybe we can start to see the spaces between them, those quiet moments where something else might be able to come through, those moments where we're not lost in the past or worried about the future, but just present right here.
And those moments, they might be brief at first, but with practice, with a willingness to let go of control, to let go of needing to explain everything, maybe they can grow. Maybe that's where we start to get a glimpse of what Krishnamurti and Bohm are pointing to.
This whole conversation has really shown how powerful awareness can be. It's not about shutting down our thoughts or denying reality. It's about seeing things clearly, without all the filters of our conditioning and beliefs.
And that includes seeing how our experience of time can create this feeling of being separate, fragmented. Remember Krishnamurti's radical idea that time has to end. Maybe that's not as crazy as it sounds. What if we could experience moments of pure presence, where there's no weight of the past or anxiety about the future?
It's like those times when you're completely absorbed in something, playing music, being in nature, even a really good conversation, and time just seems to disappear. You're just there, in the flow.
Exactly. And maybe those are glimpses of what it means to participate in the mystery, to touch a reality that's not limited by thought, a reality where separation disappears and we experience wholeness, connection.
So it's not about chasing those moments. It's about cultivating an awareness that allows them to happen naturally. It's about creating the right conditions within ourselves through mindfulness, questioning, recognizing the illusions of thought.
Beautifully put. It's not about striving for some special state, but about recognizing that this mystery, this reality beyond thought, it might be closer than we think. It might be woven into our experience, just waiting to be noticed.
It's like we're being invited to look at things differently, to pay attention in a new way, to be more sensitive to those subtle things we might normally miss.
And maybe, just maybe, if we can let go of needing to grasp, to explain, we can open ourselves to a way of being that's more spacious, more connected, and ultimately more mysterious.
Well, that's a challenge worth taking on. It feels like this deep dive has given us more questions and answers, but in a good way. It's given us a lot to think about and try out in our own lives.
And that's the whole point. Krishnamurti and Bohm, they weren't trying to give us a map, but to spark our curiosity and encourage us to go on our own journey. Remember, Krishnamurti said, "Truth is a pathless land. No map, No guide, no guaranteed destination.
But maybe that's the beauty of it. The journey itself, that constant questioning, staying open to what we don't know, maybe that's the real way to participate in the mystery.
So we leave you with this invitation. Pay attention, question your assumptions, be open to the possibility that there's more to reality than we can imagine.
And who knows what you'll find along the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.